Hello, hello, hello. There we are. Hello, everybody. How are you tonight? It's Crafty Kris here to go over a few things about the MISTI and give you a couple of tips and some tricks for using the MISTI. So first of all, just a brief description of the MISTI. In the store, we have the two different sizes. We have the 8x10 overall size, which actually gives you a stamping grid area of about 6.5 by 8.5 inside. And we have the larger one, which is 13 3/4 inches by 14 1/4 inches. So that includes the top to the bottom, left to right. And the stamping area is a 12x12, maybe just slightly bigger than a 12x12 because there has to be a little bit of play. So what comes with your MISTIs? You'll end up with, both MISTIs come with their magnets already in them. So you'll see my two magnets here. I think it's a bar now that comes with it. This one's a little bit older. And then I have a bar magnet that comes with the 12x12. Both MISTIs also come with a pad of grid paper. And the small MISTI mat, comes with one foam mat. So if you're using red rubber, you go right down to the bottom of the plate. If you're using the polymer dies, then you would use the mat plus one sheet of the paper. Don't put the whole pad in there because it'll make it too tall and might kind of distort your stamping. And then you have your two magnets. Now these guys stick together really well. It doesn't take much for them to get together and then hop on each other. So I've put a little piece of tape so that I can pull them apart quickly, and also so that I can pick them up and move them around more easily than trying to grab the round, shiny, slippery metal. So you have the two magnets with this. On the outside, there is a grid that matches the inside grid. The grid is approximately 1/4 inch. It depends on the bleed on the paper, and also on the accuracy of the laser etching on the top. But you can kind of figure that it's about 1/4 inch. Now, with the larger MISTI, I'm going to turn it sideways because this is the direction I have to work in because I don't have any space up there. It has your pad of paper, and there's about 10 sheets with each, and it has two mats. So the idea is, you can see that one mat is thicker than the other mat, and maybe I'll do it that way. So the thick mat, the thin mat goes in with your red rubber stamp. Just to give it a little more cushion, because red rubber stamps are very rigid, and they usually really give you a good ink coverage. But with a little bit of foam, it just makes it that much better. If you're using the polymer, you leave that mat and you put in the thicker mat on top, and then one sheet of your paper. Now, there are accessories that make your life easier when you're using both the large and the small MISTI. And currently in the store, we do have the small MISTI in pink and black. We are currently out of stock at the moment on the large MISTI, but we are going to be placing an order. So if you're interested in picking up the large MISTI, if you could just email customer service at craftersworkshop. I think it's CA. Maybe Sherry can correct me if I'm wrong. And let them know that you want one. So when they place an order, they will let you know as soon as they come in, and you won't be in a out of stock situation again. You'll be able to get yours on time. So accessories that come with the MISTI. You can purchase extra bars for the MISTI, and I did purchase an extra bar to work with my 12x12 because I feel that just having that one bar on such a large page, even though it is the strongest magnet I've ever seen. I just like that security of knowing that I have at least 2 points locked down like you do with the small version. So getting extra magnets if you want them, you don't have to have them. The MISTI works very well with the magnets that come with it. It's just my own personal preference. With both the MISTIs, you have something called a mouse pad. So this is the 12 by 12 mouse pad and the 6.5 by 8.5 mouse pad. The purpose of these mouse pads are to replace the paper, and there's nothing wrong with using the paper, but the paper is not like you use it up. So this is actually a far more practical piece or accessory to have, and it serves the purpose of replacing the actual paper, but it also has a surface on it, so when you're using inks and doing blending and stuff, you can do it right on the mat and clean it up afterwards. And you still have magnetic. It's still magnetic. The other thing you want to take out, sorry, I should have told you that, is because these two are the same thickness, you put that in and put that aside. And if you are doing rubber, you take it all out. And then you don't need to have the slippery surface because you've got the slippery surface here. It's just to avoid getting your spongy mat all soaked and covered with ink, and to keep it nice and clean. And I'm going to test something tonight, but that's in my own brain. So that is accessories for both of the MISTIs. So you have the big mat that goes in the big MISTI as well. And I'm going to move the big MISTI because I'm going to do my demos on the little one. It's just a little bit quicker. The other thing that you can get as accessories are these creative corners and measuring instruments. And I am going to be using the creative corners, as soon as I find out which end I opened, to just do my demo tonight with the small MISTI. So in this pack, you've got a measuring corner, both in an isosceles and what is the other one? Isosceles and right angle triangles. And you also have a corner that's long and measured that isn't angled. So if you ever want to have your stamp, okay, let me take it apart and then I can show you what they're used for. Alrighty. So these
Sorry, Kris.
Yes.
I think the hardest part of those tools is getting them out of the package.
It is, but you know, it's a great place to keep them so you don't lose them. And I don't really know how else I want to store them. You know, it's not that they're fragile, but they are really crystally sort of plastic. And
we need to figure out which Totally Tiffany bag they'll fit.
That's true. Well, I'm sure it'll fit any of them, to be honest. It's just which one and which materials you put in with it is the thing. Alrighty. So let me just quickly show you how to use these little bits. I'm not going to do any stamping, but this gives you an idea. So if you have a card, let's say, here's my card. I'm going to take all my little stamp bits off. And I want to put a stamp on a diagonal. I can set my stamp right up against this corner so that instead of going straight up and down, this is a pear, by the way, instead of going straight up and down like a pear would sit on a table, I could have my pear on a corner. I could have it on I could have it rolling down a hill here. If I move this over to this side, it's a left and a right. So I could have them, you know, stamp them rolling down the hill. This is just strictly for more giving yourself an outer edge that you don't stamp. So you have that, I guess it's 3/4 of an inch to just put all your stamps inside. So these things are really neat for those purposes, and I'm sure there's many more purposes. Whoa, this is why you saw how quickly those magnets, and if you lose them, all you have to do is put another one down in your hand and scrape around your floor and it'll pick it up. So these are the same magnets, as I said, just a little smaller. Now these guys are actually used if you want to, if you're somebody that is not comfortable stamping right up to the edge of the platform, or you have a very large stamp where if you put it right up to the edge, it may not stamp properly, then you would use these spacers to make sure that your stamp, sorry, put it that way, and put it that way. So it sticks, and that way you can put that bigger stamp in that section and you don't have to worry about this causing you any problems, because this is not flexible. Once this lid closes down on top, whoops, should do that this way. You do have to figure out which which direction you're going in to avoid hitting things. There we go. So that's not going to go anywhere. There's no sponginess in that. The sponginess is all in the center. So if you end up having a stamp that covers your entire piece, it could cause you some grief along this edge if it's too close to the side. So that's what these are for. These are awesome. And I happen to like them, so I'm going to keep them in there. Now, one thing I'm noticing is that I'm going to be using polymer stamps, and I do need to have this pad and this pad in for polymer stamps because it's a little too low.
Sorry, Kris, that's both the pad that comes with the MISTI as well as the mouse pad. That's what you're using, right?
I'm sorry, yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So then you would just line up, but you know what? That's just a little too thick. Sorry. I am going to put in, because I'm using these guys, I'm going to bring it out from the edge to make sure that I can stamp well. Plus, I have my handy dandy pressure tool, which will help me with all my stamping. There we go. Whoop. You have to have them the right side up, I'm noticing, because there's sort of like a little grid that they fit into. Okay, so there we go. So there's we're ready to stamp. So now the thing about the MISTI that's awesome is you can do multiples of the same card very easily. Now I have a very complicated card, but I'm not going to have to worry about each step, because once I put my little guy, I'm going to put my my stamp, I'm going to flip it over so it's on the stamp side. So the stamp where the ink would be is touching where the card is. So I'm going to have him here. And then I just close my lid, push down. Oh, you know what? The other thing is you want to make sure that your brand new stamps are prepared. So these are all new stamps and they're very sticky. I'm just going to quickly take my white eraser and condition the stamp. And what I'm actually doing when I'm saying I'm conditioning it, I'm taking off whatever that stuff is that they put to make it all nice and shiny in the manufacturer's plant. And all it does is it just takes off that extra shiny layer, and now it will receive the ink much better, and it won't stick to your paper the same way. So I'm going to close it. That's where I want my first guy, because I'm going to have two. Oh, it still does it a little bit, but it's ready to go. So let me just, I had my inks ready. Oh, and when you're doing your stamping, you want to make sure you have all your colors ready. So I have one. I'm not exactly the best stamp person for nice, clean stamping. I have a tendency to use the same yellow brush for all the colors, but I do the colors from light to dark. and then the pad in between dries out. So I'm just applying. Actually, I can just do it with this because I'm not smudging. So I'm just applying my ink, and I'm going to push it down. Now I have no idea whether I got the ink all over the place where I should have got it. And that, there we go. And it's a little bit light. I've missed some spots. So that other thing that most stampers experience where things are not done evenly and they're lighter in some parts and darker in other parts. This takes away that whole issue because it's in the same position each and every time. And because
this is where your pressure tool will be a big help as well.
Yeah, for especially, sorry, I should have been using that. I probably wouldn't have to have done this so many times. So let's do that. So pressure tool, the felt is what goes down. And you don't have to, you know, try to break the plastic. You're just making sure that you're getting even pressure all over the whole shape. There we go. Oh, and that's nice and orange. Now, what I would simply do, because I've already got myself set up in my corners, is I would take this out and pop in a new one. Line it up. Get my ink on my pad. Use my pressure tool this time. There we go. Push it down. Again, a little more ink. This color is a light color too. So sometimes having more colors and layering more color one on top of the other helps it feel darker. There we go. And then I can pop this out. And you can see how you can do multiples, one right after the other, without doing much in the way of fussing. So now I can pop this off. I'm going to put my card back in here. This time I am going to use the black because I want to put a happy face on him. Make sure you have things that you can wipe your fingers off when you get messiness on you. And this right side guy, oops, I shouldn't have done that. Sorry, lost my mind for a minute there. First, you want to prepare it because it's too slippery. That's if it's a new stamp. If it's an old stamp, you don't have to worry about it. And I'm going to lay him down, or lay his eyeballs down where I want to see them on the card. Then I'm going to close the lid, pick it up, and now I'm going to stamp and lift up. And then I can bring all the cards that I've already done and continue to do that process. So every little bit of the layering that I need to do, all I simply do, if I want his legs in there, I put the legs upside down so that the inking side of the stamp is touching the paper. And I make sure that my legs are, you know, touching my stamp, or the stamp part of the legs is touching the body of the lemon, or the pear, sorry. I think I must be tired. I'm getting my words all wrong. And then I just ink up, and I should have used a stamp that doesn't need prep. That's what I should have done. Little rub. And there he is. He's so cute. So that is your basic way of using your stamps. And it can be a simple flower that doesn't require any additional parts like I've started you with right now. But it could be as simple as lining up the sentiment on the card. So say this image has already been stamped. I want to have down here, I want to have my sentiment, and this is where I use the grid. And I'm going to have to stand, sorry. And so I am going to put this down there. Make sure it's see, this is really why you do not want to use stamps without prepping them. So sorry about that. Take my guy's legs off. Make sure it goes back in its spot. Now, I have a bit of ink on the plate, so I have to be careful not to put too much pressure, or because I know I can just clean it off and then touch up. And put that down. And there we go. I have my stamp where I want it, as opposed to having it on a block, trying to line it up, looking through everything. I line it up right on the paper and move it. Now, that's the easy, simple way of doing your stamping. Now I'm going to show you how to use this. And this is why you want to get that slippery surface cleanable piece of mouse pad, because now I'm going to use it for stenciling, not just for stamping. So let me get one set of stamps off in one direction. Okay. Now, because I'm going to be doing some rubbing and things, I'm going to be using my other magnets. And I could have used my other magnets when I had the card and it was moving around on me and just drop a magnet. But you could see I could do it just using the corners without even using the magnets. So I am going to get another card, stick it in the corner. Okay. And I want my flower to be here. And I'm going to close my lid. Maybe I'll put this just to make sure it stays steady. So if I have a stencil where I've got a texture and then the pieces that put together the actual image, I would do the main image just to make sure I've got a location for where I want this to happen, this texture to happen. So I got down my stamp face down, make sure it's nice and stuck together. This one's been used, it doesn't stick. It's very happy to move. And let's see, I'm going to use my light, or no, I'm going to use the black because I need to make sure that I have my outline. I stuck those together because the lid keeps falling off, but it's not very practical when you're using them like this. All right, get it nice and well inked. And the thing I really like about this particular stamp is kind of, it has some forgiveness because it's kind of pot marked. So it's not an absolute clean line anyway. It's a little bit of a vintagey look to it. But I can see that there are some spots. So I'm just going to go over, and because it's all stuck together and I don't have to worry about things moving, I can go back in and make sure I get a nice print. There we go. Nice and black. All right. So what I would normally do if I'm going to immediately add color to this is I would just hit it with a couple of seconds of a warm heat gun. This hasn't been on, so I'm going to warm it away from my paper for a minute. And this is just to make sure that there's no still damp black on there, so that when I start to do my coloring and my background, that it ends up turning into kind of a muddy color. So I just heat this to make sure it's flat. And you'll notice that the corners come up a bit. So I'm going to be working down here anyway. Now, I'm going to go right into adding my pattern. I want it to come a little bit behind the flower, but I don't want it on the flower. So I am going to make sure that I mask off with my yellow tape just this bottom part of both these pieces here, because I don't want that to be the mess that goes into the flower. And I can use this line up here if I want. If I was going to just do it on the bottom, I could just line it up right away. But I'm going to move it up a little bit, and probably maybe an inch using my grid lines. Okay, and then I'm going to do a green background. So I got my green. I'm going to rub that right on here, and I'm not worried about the paper ripping and tearing because I'm actually working on a surface that I can clean afterwards. And I just realized I should be masking off the bottom too. This is usually not the way I work. And so I'm avoiding what's going on in here a little bit, just coming up to the edge of it. I don't necessarily want it to be all dark green, just want to have a little bit of green, maybe darker in some areas. And then I can pull this off. And there's my background already done. Now, the reason I'm keeping this all like this is because after I do that flower, my black is going to look a little bit aged. And so I'm leaving this here so that I can put some black ink and go back over top and make sure that there we go. So I'm lining this up. I do not want to have that get anything on it. And I want to block off this edge. And I'm doing this all right on the same mat. I'm not moving my mat. Take my green off. And I'm going to go to my yellow again, which is here. I'm going to start with my lightest color, and then I'll add some extra in afterwards. And I think I need just a tiny bit more. There we go. And loading up. And you see, none of that black is really moving, but because I'm putting a layer of color over top, it mutes the black, but it's not making it bleed anywhere. Okay, so there we have it. Now I'm going to switch my yellows. And because I'm going out to the outer edges. I'm just going to cover that up a little bit. And I'm going to go to my darker yellow. Whoops. And put that along the outer edge. There we go. Always make sure you got the right one on the right ink. All right, and now I'm going to take that off very carefully. There we go. And that I shouldn't touch. This I can touch. Lining it up. This will be the test. Make sure I haven't moved it around. I'm going to stand over top of it. And there we go, nice and crisp. And then before I move it, I'm going to put my sentiment on there. I think I decided to put happy birthday. And I'm literally going to lay it right on the card. Take this guy off now. Rub off that black I left there. Close it down. And I just need to make it a little bit more crisp. And there you go. My card is ready. And now, you know, I would put leaves and other things, but as a quick demonstration of the two ways that you can get quick cards done, there you go. So the small one is easy for small projects, but if you have something that's a little bit more, not challenging, but maybe a little bit more dynamic, you can switch to using the 12 by 12. I'm not going to go through the process with you at the moment, but I'll show you how I came about using it. So this is a page. Let me get this out of the way so you can see better. This is a 12 by 12 page I created using a pink fresh, and some of you are going to cringe. I cut up a pink fresh stamp that came with the stamp, the stencil, and the dies. I don't need the dies for this project unless I wanted to make it more three-dimensional. But I actually very carefully cut up all the flowers, and I stamped the flowers onto a piece of paper. And basically what I did was I put the paper, when it was blank, in the machine, tucked it right up to the corner, because you want to make sure one corner is always your guide. And then on the top of my the top cover, I lined up my 10 1/4 inch plate template, and I literally stuck it down just with 2 pieces of tape. And then what I did, and I'm going to do it sideways again. And then what I did was I lined up my flowers, all the cut flowers around the edge. So I did it as a group. So I grouped the 3 flowers that come in the set together. And I did my first run with the 3 flowers together, say here. And then I just shifted the flowers and moved them around and did them, you know, with a big one in the middle or 2 little ones together and then a big one, and all the way around the outside edge. And then I went and I took my leaves and I filled in spots with my leaves and made sure that when I laid, so once I had my flowers down, I could now use my flowers as my guide to lay my leaves right close to the flowers so they actually touch. So I did that with all the different leaves, and then I took the little buds and I pushed those in. Now the buds didn't really connect in some places, so all I did was I took a little paintbrush, took some of the ink, filled it in, and then took a black marker just to attach them so they were attached. So it all happened very easily. In terms of coloring it, the trick that I used, and you might have to watch this video more than once. So whatever level I was on, I always used my first, like I would focus on this flower. So I would do this flower and all of that same flower at one time. So I would focus the flower and do the color there and do all of them. And then I would do all of these flowers and then all of those flowers. Then template number 2, I used my template 1 to figure out first of all where the lines go, because now you don't have the formula anymore that's on here, which matches this. So I had to figure out a way to constantly be able to line it up. And so I just put this dirty one on top of the clean one, made sure I had some tape on each side. And then I laid this down over top, lined it up with the top stencil, pushed down the tape on either side, which kept the bottom stencil down, lifted this, took it away, and then I did the actual inking. Then I picked it up again, lined it up, came down here, lined it up, pushed down the tape on either side, lifted the top off, and then did the inking. So I did that all the way around. Now, it's not super quick in the way that the cards are super quick. However, it's a pretty stunning layout. And then all I did to make it look like it was 3-dimensional was I just trimmed out, I traced everywhere my 5x7 photograph cut across. I put a little line so I would know that I had to take my X-Acto knife and cut that out to that line. And that's it. So all in all, I think this probably took me 2 hours. And
Kris?
Yeah.
Sorry, quick question. Yeah. Could you have lined up your stamps for 1/4 of the circle and then rotate your paper instead of moving the stamps?
Not really, because it doesn't really fill 1/4 of the paper. That's one of the problems. If you had a stamp that actually physically filled, like there's only these 3 pieces, right? So I left these 3 pieces as like my starting point. So I just had the 3 flowers, and I lined them up on my half circle here as the 3 flowers. But it didn't give me this and this to give the whole full 1/4. Now, that's a brilliant idea. It's not anything I thought of to do or to question. And the fact that you're telling that to me now, if I have bigger flowers or more flowers in the same stamp set, or maybe I combined stamp sets and could actually come up with 1/4, that would be brilliant. That would definitely work.
Just something to play with then.
Yeah. So that's a great idea. And don't be afraid to mix your stencils and your stamps, because even if the stamps aren't part of the same stamp group and the stencils aren't part of the same stencil group, you're going to be making them all in the same color lines. So everything will meld together. So the greens that are on whatever leaves you use are going to be the greens that will be everywhere on the page. And this, reddish version of color, you're going to use on these 3 flowers, but you could also use them on the addition of these 2 flowers. So you could have many different stamp sets, and you could even use all of your flower stamp sets to create the entire circle. And the only reason I didn't draw the circle on my page, which I could have done as well, which might have been simpler, is because I happen to have the template and I'm lazy. And it's much harder for me to trace a piece of paper than it is for me to just stick it right on top of the plastic. Because this plastic is where all my stamps are going, ultimately, before they end up on the page. So as Sherry says, you could do 1/4 of it at a time and then just simply rotate the page. Or you could even get the entire circle done and then stamp the whole thing. But stamping the whole thing at one time, I think, would be a challenge. You definitely would have to re-ink and re-ink, because I think by the time you inked this quarter and this quarter, that quarter would start drying by the, you know what I mean? Like, you'd have to probably stamp more than one time. And using, this is an important tool, definitely, with these bigger projects, to get even pressure across the page. All right, and then you can see that my paper is just tucked underneath those little pieces that I X-Acto knifed, is that a word, out. And that's it. So like, I could not, I don't think I could physically make something like this with my hand doing it and have it look so uniform. Like, I would end up going off the line and things would be like a little bit wonky. But the fact that this is so nicely balanced is because of this tool. And it's the same with this stamping of the eyeballs on the, where's my little guy over here? The eyeballs. Like, if I had that on a stamp pad, I would never get it lined up that good. And I'd never have the legs touching the body properly, because you can't see it unless you're putting it, just the stamp itself right on the paper, because that block, it prevents you from seeing all that close detail. So these platforms are really great for getting detail. Anyway,
I would think if you were scrapbooking, I know that I have created a layout and I want to stamp my title on, and you've done all that work, and
yep.
Usually that's the one that's the time that the stamp doesn't stamp cleanly, or you don't get enough ink on. So having that big MISTI is fabulous, so that you can stamp and restamp without ruining all your other work.
And yes, exactly. And imagine, you have your photo there and you're going to do your stamping. The photo is like in its place, and you want it to line up nice and evenly on all 4 sides. Maybe it's words, for instance. So you want like a title that goes all the way around your 5x7 photograph. Well, how are you going to make it absolutely straight? This is really the only way to do it, because you line it up and you can see it before you stamp it, whether or not it's going to be straight. Do you know what I mean?
Totally know what you mean.
And I'm sure everyone else probably has that same experience, that things, oh, it's a little bit off here and it's a little bit off there. And if you're eyeballing, and I'm a big eyeballer, so the fact that I'm saying that, if you're eyeballing, you cannot do as steady a job as straight a job in my eyeballing experience with stamps, which is probably why I'm kind of mixed media, because it doesn't matter. Maybe that's why I've gone that way. It's because I couldn't ever get anything to line up properly. And now I can. It's a whole new world for me now. And that's it, guys. I hope there was some learning in there and some information in there and some ideas to think about how to push your MISTI further than just making a couple of dozen cards at one time, and playing with that idea of being able to hold things in place and manipulate everything around other things. So that's really all I have at the moment. And who's next week, Sherry?
I believe Alexis is next week.
Cool.
And I think she's going to do a Copic demonstration.
Whoa.
So we will see you all next week. And if you have any questions about the MISTI, or if you want to get your name on that wait list for that memory MISTI, which is the big one, just give us an email.
Yeah. And I mean, it's only the beginning of what you can do with this too, because there's layers and layers of additional flowers you can cut and stamp, and yeah, it's crazy.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.